My name is Madeline Carter, 33 years old, CEO of a health tech company in Denver. I was raised as the older sister who carried the weight, quietly raising my younger sister after our parents passed, sacrificing everything in the name of keeping our family intact. But 3 days before my wedding, while everyone was raising their glasses in celebration, my sister, Haley, stood up in front of more than 50 guests, placed her hand over her chest, let the tears fall, and said she had late-stage cancer. No one could hold back their tears when Haley whispered, "Could you let me have your wedding day instead? I just want one last memory before I go." And I just stood there in silence, clutching a folder of negative test results and a court-issued guardianship paper I'd quietly maintained for the past 15 years. What would you do if the one person you protected your whole life staged an entire drama to steal away your last shot at happiness? Leave a comment if you've ever been betrayed by someone in your own family. Tap like if you believe truth has the power to save a life. Subscribe if you want to hear the full story, because what I'm about to share, no one in my family was ever ready to hear. I was born and raised in a small town on the outskirts of Boulder, Colorado, where winters painted rooftops in white and summers lit up the quiet hills. From the outside, my family looked picture perfect. A 2-story house with a white picket fence, a calm father who worked as an accountant, a gentle stay-at-home mother, and 2 sisters 4 years apart. But inside that blue wooden door, nothing had ever been balanced. Haley was my younger sister. She came into the world like a gift everyone had been waiting for. Curly blonde hair, sparkling blue eyes, and a smile that melted hearts. My mother used to say, "Haley is the soft dream I never thought I deserved." I was already 4 years old then, standing silently by the hospital bed, holding onto a worn-out teddy bear while my mom cradled Haley in her arms. I never blamed my mother. But I remember vividly the feeling of being invisible. When I drew my first picture, Dad glanced at it and said, "Nice job, sweetheart." But when Haley scribbled 2 pencil lines on a blank sheet, everyone swooned over it like it was a masterpiece. When I got a perfect score in math, Mom reminded me to do more chores. But when Haley barely passed, the family went out for dinner to celebrate. I learned how to be quiet. I learned how to stand behind without feeling jealous. Or at least I tried. At 17, I received a full scholarship to a prestigious international exchange program in England. I had been preparing for that opportunity for 2 years. It was the first time I thought I might be able to step out of the shadow Haley always seemed to cast. But then everything changed. It was a snowy December night. Our parents were driving back from my aunt's birthday party. Haley and I were home. I was studying and she was in the bathroom with a face mask on, listening to music I can't even remember. When the phone rang close to midnight, I was still reading. The voice on the other end was from the police. I don't remember exactly when I dropped the phone. I just remember running downstairs, screaming for Haley, and then the 2 of us holding each other in the living room under the dim yellow lights, my hands shaking uncontrollably. Our parents died at the scene. A drunk driver had run a redless intersection. My world collapsed overnight. But I didn't have time to grieve. The next day, the family attorney called me into his office. I thought it would be about the inheritance, the house, maybe legal arrangements. But no. He slid a folder stamped by the court toward me. "Madeline, since your sister is only 15 and your parents didn't leave a will, the court has appointed a legal guardian. After reviewing academic records, moral standing, and financial capability, you were chosen." I stared at the words "legal guardian of Haley Carter," written under my name, speechless. I'm only 19. I was about to leave for my study abroad, I stammered. The attorney looked at me over his gold-rimmed glasses, his voice calm but firm. "If you decline, Haley will be placed in the state's minor care system. Someone else will be assigned." I nodded. A nod that felt like my entire life had just been rerouted without asking for permission. I never told Haley. To her, I was just the big sister, the one who stayed out of love, not obligation. I called the school in England and withdrew. I lied, saying there was a family emergency and that I'd reapply next year. But I knew there'd be no next year. I needed to work, hire a lawyer, pay utility bills, and become an adult overnight. I found an unpaid internship at a small biotech company in Denver. Started from the bottom as a lab assistant. I learned everything on the job. Meanwhile, I took Haley to school, cooked dinner, signed off on her report cards, taught her how to write college essays and apply for financial aid. She never asked why I knew so much about adult paperwork. Never questioned why I hadn't gone back to school. Maybe she thought I chose that life. Or maybe she was just used to me always being there. There were nights I'd watch her sleep, her face peaceful, almost childlike, unbothered by the weight of the world. And I'd realize I wasn't just her sister. I was her mother, her anchor, the last thread holding her safe from everything outside. Somewhere along the line, I stopped hoping someone would notice what I had given up. I just knew I couldn't stop. And that, for some unnamed reason, I kept loving someone who didn't even know they were being shielded from the world. I started every morning at 6 a.m. with a black coffee and a never-ending to-do list. For over a decade, my life was a non-stop blur of work, study, and building everything from scratch. I had no safety net. No inheritance. No one to catch me if I fell. But I never hesitated. After 10 years of relentless effort, I launched Clarion Health, a startup focused on remote health monitoring for chronic patients. We started with just 3 people in a shared office space. By year 3, I made it onto a 40 under 40 list in a healthcare magazine. By year 5, I was CEO overseeing nearly 100 employees, with a private office in downtown Denver looking out at the snow-covered Rocky Mountains. I didn't chase luxury. I still drove my old Prius, brought sandwiches from home, and worked late into the night. But my bank account told a different story. I could pay Haley's tuition without loans. Cover her bills without blinking. I thought once I had the means it wouldn't feel like a burden anymore. I was wrong. Haley was 25. She had dropped her 3rd semester of communications because the professor didn't get her, then switched to fashion design, then said the school lacked inspiration. Every time I asked, she had a perfectly reasonable excuse. But it always ended the same: an email asking for more money. One month, her credit card bill hit nearly $7,000. Designer handbags, spa visits, personal stylists, flights to Miami for mental healing. I tried to gently suggest she cut back, focus more on school. But each time she'd sulk, then not call me for a week. I knew that silence was her way of punishing me. "You don't understand the pressure of living alone in this city," she once cried during a 2 a.m. call. "Everyone thinks I have everything handled, so no one actually cares how I'm doing." I sat at my desk, staring at a looming quarterly report, whispering, "I'll send you more, but try to be careful, okay?" I didn't know if I was protecting Haley, or just clinging to the image of the little sister I had once loved enough to give up everything for. My friends started asking questions. During a small gathering at my place while I was prepping salad in the kitchen, Monica, my closest friend and the CTO of my company, asked gently, "Maddie, be honest. Are you still paying your sister's rent?" I forced a smile and set the knife down. "Yeah. She's still in school." Monica narrowed her eyes. "I thought she dropped out for the 3rd time?" I didn't answer. Just changed the subject. But her look stayed with me the entire night. I used to believe that if I just worked hard enough, was strong enough, loved enough, then the people I cared about would have peace in their lives. What I didn't expect was that same love would become the very excuse Haley used to spiral. One day, I stopped by her apartment unannounced. It was a spacious place near downtown, leased under my name. The living room lights were on, a brand new Persian rug stretched beneath a white leather couch, and on the table were 3 neatly arranged boxes of macarons next to an expensive bottle of wine. Haley was lying back, her freshly manicured nails gleaming, giggling on the phone. When she saw me, she flinched slightly, then hung up. "You didn't say you were coming," Haley said, her voice tinged with annoyance. "I had a meeting nearby and thought I'd stop in," I said, trying to keep my tone light. "Just got home from work?" He shrugged. "No. Taking a break to reset. Last week was just too overwhelming." "But it's been nearly 3 weeks, hasn't it?" I asked, unable to hide the doubt in my voice this time. Haley paused, then snapped, "Are you interrogating me? Am I not allowed to have a rough patch?" I exhaled slowly. "No. I'm just trying to understand what's going on. Because I saw the charges on my card: new furniture, wine, takeout, while you said you were struggling. Well, you have money. It's not like you can't afford it." I stood there. Those 6 words hit like a slap. It's not like you can't afford it. But I didn't say anything. I left quietly. I didn't play music on the drive home like I usually did. All I heard were the tires gripping the road with every turn, like a reminder I was moving forward, but something from the past was still gripping tight, refusing to let go. And that something looked exactly like the person I loved most. I met Nathan at a medical conference in Santa Fe, where he was presenting a new microsurgery technique for spinal trauma. I was impressed, not just by his intelligence but by the calmness in how he spoke. Nathan wasn't like the other men I'd dated. He didn't care what I did, how much I made, or how many people reported to me. He just looked at me, listened, and asked things like, "Window or aisle when you fly?" We dated for almost a year before he proposed. It wasn't at some fancy restaurant, no violin playing in the background. It was one early autumn evening in my tiny kitchen while we were cooking dinner together, his hands covered in flour and half-chopped carrots, when he suddenly said, "I don't think I ever want to wake up anywhere else but here." I turned around. He smiled, pulling a ring from his pocket. I had no idea it had been there the whole time. I nodded, laughing and crying at once. Not because I was surprised, but because I felt safe. When I told Haley we were engaged, she was quiet for a few seconds. Then she laughed out loud, pulled me into a hug and whispered, "You've deserved this for so long." I wanted to believe her. I really did. But things started to change at the engagement party my friends threw at a small wine bar in Highlands. It was a cozy evening, warm music, soft golden lights reflecting in champagne glasses. I spotted Nathan across the room chatting with some of my coworkers, looking relaxed, a glass of red wine in hand. Haley arrived almost an hour late, wearing a tight red dress I'd never seen her wear before. Every eye turned toward her in that moment, including Nathan's. I didn't blame him. My sister was beautiful. Always had been. "Sorry, traffic," Haley said lightly, setting her purse down and heading straight toward Nathan. I sat down with Monica, chatting, but my eyes kept drifting to the corner where Haley and Nathan stood, closer than necessary. Haley laughed loudly, placing her hand on Nathan's arm as she said something, leaning in like they were the only two people in the room. "Haley seems close with Nathan," Monica said quietly. "Not judging. Just observing." I smiled thinly, trying to stay calm. "She's probably just excited." A week later, while managing emails on my laptop, I accidentally opened a synced mailbox from an old shared account Nathan hadn't unlinked. There was an email from Haley. Subject: "Cute little coincidence." I opened it. Inside was a mirror selfie of Haley at the gym, a light sheen of sweat on her forehead, Nathan blurry in the background on a treadmill. She'd written, "You still can't believe we ran into each other at the gym while I was wearing this shirt? Remember what I said about fate? Seeing you made my whole day. Don't tell my sister. Let me mess with her later." I sat there a long time. I didn't feel angry. Just cold. That evening in Nathan's apartment, I handed him my phone. No accusations. Just a question: "When did Haley send you this?" Nathan looked at the screen, then up at me, a mix of surprise and frustration in his eyes. "About 3 days ago." I didn't reply. "I didn't tell you because I knew it'd upset you. And you thought it wasn't worth mentioning?" I didn't want to make it a thing. I figured it was just a dumb joke. I didn't blame him. Honestly. But something inside me cracked. I started recalling unnecessary touches. Messages Haley sent Nathan to help her pick a birthday gift for me, that somehow turned into hour-long chats. I remembered her look the day I walked in with Nathan, her arm through mine like I'd taken something that was never mine to begin with. I asked Nathan, "Do you think Haley's doing this on purpose?" He hesitated. "I don't want to think so. But there have been times I've felt uncomfortable." I nodded. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat in my home office, staring at the blank screen. My heart felt heavy. I wasn't afraid of Haley stealing Nathan. I was afraid of everything else collapsing. I had spent my youth keeping her upright. And she, just one wrong step from her, could bring everything I'd built crashing down. I was in a meeting on the 16th floor when my phone buzzed nonstop. Notifications off, but something felt off enough that I checked. Dozens of texts, emails, social media alerts. And they all had one word in common: Haley. "Did you hear? Haley's throwing a farewell to life party." "Madeline, I'm so sorry. If we had known about her illness, we would have never pressured you about the wedding date. She's so brave. I hope you can understand her decision." One message included a link from an old college friend. I tapped it. It was a long post from Haley, accompanied by a photo of her standing in a room filled with white hydrangeas, holding a medical diagnosis paper with parts blurred out, her eyes full of sadness. "I don't want pity. I just want to say thank you to those who've walked with me through this journey. After tonight, I'll begin more intense, painful treatments, and I may not have the strength to see everyone again. Right below that was a bold italic line. Saturday, April 10th. Farewell to life party. At the Garden House from 5 p.m. That was the exact day and time of my wedding. Haley knew the date. She was the maid of honor, the one who came to every dress fitting, every restaurant meeting, the first to sign the guest list card I printed. I set the phone down on the table, my body cold as if I'd just walked out of a freezer. The meeting went on, but I couldn't hear anything. My mind echoed in pieces. Cancer, Phil, 30, is my wedding. Haley. I returned to my office and quietly shut the door. Monica walked in a few minutes later holding 2 cups of coffee. You okay? She asked, setting one down. I looked at her. Do you believe her? Monica didn't answer right away. She sat down across from me, her eyes scanning mine. You're asking, Haley's actually sick. I nodded. You've seen her drop out of school, lie, borrow money and never pay it back. You saw her cling to Nathan, send him photos and blame it on coincidence. Now this. And your family, the media, social networks. They're all calling you heartless, Monica said quietly. I had read those comments. Below Haley's post they poured in, sympathy mixed with scorn. How could a sister plan her wedding on the same day her little sister says goodbye to life? Has anyone told Madeline Carter her sister's dying? Clarion Health should reevaluate the morals of their CEO. I didn't react. I didn't respond to the press. I didn't say a word in my defense. I simply set the coffee down, my hand tightening slightly. That evening I got home late. Nathan was cooking in the kitchen, the smell of grilled meat and asparagus filling the air. He heard the door, turned around and smiled. Your favorite's on the menu tonight, he said. I stood still, then walked up and wrapped my arms around him from behind. I leaned my head against his back, eyes stinging. I'm tired, I whispered. I don't know who's telling the truth anymore, or who's just performing. Nathan turned and held me tightly. I know what you're thinking. But if Haley really is sick, I'll be there, I cut in. If it's real, I'll cancel the wedding, transfer her to a better hospital, hold her hand through every round of chemo. But Nathan, what if it's not real? He looked at me for a long time. You want to know the truth? I nodded. Then find it. 3 days later, Haley appeared on a podcast hosted by a popular influencer named Rachel Lane, who was known for interviewing inspirational figures. That episode was titled, The Last Embrace, Haley Carter and the Journey Through Cancer with Love. I listened to the entire broadcast while driving to the medical center where Haley claimed she was receiving treatment. I only have one wish, Haley's voice rang out, sweet as I remembered it from our childhood. It's to see my sister happy before I no longer can. I hope she still has her wedding. I want to be there, even if just for a moment. That would be the most beautiful goodbye gift. Rachel sniffled and asked, Does she know about this wish? Haley replied, I'm too afraid to tell her. I worry she'll think I'm trying to ruin everything. But I just want a little love, even if it's the last. I shut off the podcast as my car turned into the parking lot of the medical center. My entire body burned. I had sacrificed everything to protect Haley. And now she stood before thousands of strangers painting a moving portrait. One where I was just the cold, unfeeling figure in the corner. I walked into reception and explained that I was a family member of a patient. But the name Haley Carter wasn't listed in any cancer treatment records. The receptionist directed me to medical records. Still nothing. No surgeries, no chemo sessions, no assigned oncologist. I walked out of that place feeling like I was losing sight of who I was. The whole world had turned against me over a statement no one had ever verified. And Haley, the girl I once believed I had rescued my entire life, was orchestrating this game with terrifying ease. I sat in my car for a long time, forehead resting on the steering wheel. Not from pain, but because I had finally understood something. Haley no longer needed to steal the spotlight. She had already taken it from my hands, with the world's sympathy as her weapon. I didn't go home right away. I stopped by my office, unlocked my personal safe and pulled out a private file I had kept not out of mistrust, but from years of learning to protect myself. Inside was a contact list for matters our legal or accounting teams couldn't touch. At the top, Daniel Reese, a private investigator who had once worked with our company on an intellectual property lawsuit. I called him as soon as I got home, my voice unnervingly calm. I need to verify someone's medical history. Her name is Haley Carter. I need to know if she was ever actually diagnosed with cancer. And if so, who's treating her? Daniel didn't ask questions. He just said, "Give me 3 days." For the next 3 days, I went to work as usual. I signed papers, attended board meetings, received sympathetic messages from former close partners. They looked at me with a mix of pity and caution. No one said it outright, but I could see the question behind their eyes. How does a healthcare CEO not know her own sister is sick? 3 days later, Daniel sent me a full report along with a brief message. There is no cancer diagnosis under the name Haley Carter in any federal, state, or private insurance system for the past 18 months. I opened the file. Line after line. No ICD code for ovarian cancer. No prescriptions for tumor treatments. No appointments with oncology specialists. No trace in Medicare, Medicaid, or any private insurer systems. I leaned back in my chair, gripping the mouse so hard I almost dropped it. But there was more. Daniel continued. Recently, her credit card paid $3,600 to a company named Metaform Solutions. I tracked it. It's an underground agency that fabricates fake medical records for personal or legal use. I opened the website Daniel had sent me. The interface was crude, half-coded, half-concealed. Under a hidden tab, I found the section labeled Create Custom Medical Records. Users could select the type of illness, severity level, hospital, physician, and date of diagnosis. Everything had a price. I didn't know how long I sat still. I just remember that by the time I stood up, night had completely fallen. The light from the high-rise buildings cast a dull reflection on the glass windows, as if the whole city was bowing its head in silence. I didn't call Haley. I didn't go to see her. I didn't confront, cry, or get angry. Instead, I printed every piece of evidence, each transaction, every investigative note, every screenshot of her messages, even the chat threads between her and the man who created her fake medical records, a man named Craig D., who received cash in exchange for forged diagnoses. I placed everything into a black binder and locked it in the private cabinet at home. At the same time, I began preparing for the wedding. Not to celebrate, but to build a stage. Because if Haley had chosen to perform, then I would be the one controlling the lights, the sound, and the final curtain. I rehired the professional event team, instructing them to restore the original plan without altering the date or time. Nathan knew I was orchestrating something, but he didn't ask. We had a quiet agreement. When I became too silent, it meant I was in control. In meetings with the venue, the band, and the photographer, I still smiled, still discussed flower colors, still signed payments using my personal business card. But alongside all that, I hired a lawyer who specialized in identity fraud and medical scams. I asked him to verify whether I could use the evidence to pursue legal action if necessary. He said yes, if I had proof that Haley gained from faking illness. Donations, sponsorships, or any damage to another person's finances or reputation would all qualify. Already had that. I also reached out to the producer of Rachel Lane's podcast. Not to complain, but to request a copy of the original recording, including the uncut behind-the-scenes footage. I said I wanted to use it for a tribute video for a terminally ill loved one. My voice trembled just enough for the assistant not to suspect anything. That night, I returned home and played the unreleased audio. In it, during a lighting adjustment break, I heard Haley giggling as she spoke to the camera operator. "Make sure to cut the part where I talk about being curable, okay? I don't want anyone getting their hopes up too much." A girl behind the camera replied, "Trying to go emotional?" Haley answered, "Yeah. The more tragic it sounds, the more people will share it." I stopped the recording. I was ready. Not for revenge, but to end a game I never asked to play. But if Haley had started with a lie, I would finish it with the truth. And this time in front of every person who had ever believed her. I remembered sitting on the stone steps outside Attorney Thomas Ellis's office on a bitter February afternoon. Haley had just turned 15, and it had been 2 weeks since our parents' funeral. I was just a college freshman who had dropped out mid-semester, my hair tied in a messy knot, hands trembling as I clutched court papers to apply for guardianship. Thomas was the one who walked me through everything, From confirming my legal standing to setting up a dedicated trust fund for Haley using the only life insurance payout our parents had left. 15 years later, I sat in that same chair, not as a girl needing guidance, but as a woman whose eyes no longer shook, whose voice was steady and cold as steel. I need you to review Haley Carter's legal status. Specifically, her guardianship and access to trust funds. Thomas looked at me for a moment. Has something happened, Madeline? I believe I'm still Haley's legal guardian, I replied flatly. I suspect she's using assets from the trust for fraudulent purposes. And if that's true, I need to know whether I have the legal right to intervene. Thomas opened his laptop and logged into the system. Within minutes he paused. His eyes scanned the screen quickly before he looked up at me. You were never removed as her guardian, Madeline. The temporary guardianship automatically converted to permanent once Haley turned 18. No request to terminate was ever filed. No one informed me, I said quietly. That's typical. If the ward doesn't request it and the guardian doesn't initiate termination, the court assumes it remains in effect, unless there's a formal challenge. So legally speaking, I looked up, any assets still within the trust system under my name, I have the authority to freeze or manage them, correct? Thomas nodded slowly. If she hasn't fully separated from the original financial system, then yes. I'll need to review all accounts established after she turned 18. I pulled out a prepared folder. Bank statements, digital invoices, rental registration, even donation platforms Haley had created on social media. Thomas flipped through each page. When he got to the one showing the donation site, where Haley had written "Help a sister fight for her life," he stopped. Do you know how much she received through this campaign? Almost $180,000. In just 4 weeks. Thomas said nothing. He folded his hands, leaning forward slightly. If most of that money was funneled into accounts still connected to the old trust, or used to obtain assets derived from it, then you absolutely have legal grounds to step in. Moreover, using fake medical documentation to collect money from the public could qualify as third-degree fraud under state law. I nodded. I didn't feel victorious. There was only a strange stillness in me, like finally finding an exit from a maze I never wanted to enter. The next morning, Thomas and I met with the bank to verify Haley's financial system. A series of accounts in her name had been set up 2 years earlier, still using the initial financial confirmation documents, which tied back to the trust one had established. That meant a significant portion of the donations had gone directly into accounts under my legal oversight. I remember pausing my pen just before signing the freeze request. Thomas leaned in. Are you sure? There's no going back from this. I didn't look at him. I simply said, if I let this continue, how many more people will be fooled? How many kids will sell handmade bracelets to support a disease that doesn't even exist? In that moment, I thought of the photos Haley posted online. The bouquets. The handwritten letters. The drawing from a little girl named Emily, who sent $10 of her Lunar New Year money to help Miss Haley heal. I held up that printed message, a screenshot Haley had publicly shared, where she wrote, "No matter what happens, I know I've been loved. Thank you, little angels out there." I didn't cry when I saw that picture, but I felt my heart quietly fracture. Not out of anger, but out of sorrow, for someone who had gone so far to create a fabricated world that she could no longer tell what was real. Days later, the donation page was taken down. Haley's accounts were temporarily frozen. I stayed silent. I spoke to no one. Gave no press interviews. Didn't confront her. I simply continued planning the event. An event that I knew would no longer be a wedding. It would be the day the truth was unveiled, in front of everyone who once adored my sister. And everyone who had turned their backs on me, all because of a beautifully crafted lie. The night before the wedding, Varelli's restaurant sat quietly under warm golden lights, tucked in the historic district of Denver where the early spring air still carried a gentle chill. It was a small gathering, about 50 close guests. Friends, relatives, and a few longtime colleagues of mine and Nathan's. Everything was arranged with care. White linen tablecloths, lightly scented wooden candles, crystal glasses catching reflections of laughter and red wine. I walked into the banquet room wearing a soft blush silk dress, hand in hand with Nathan. He gave my hand a gentle squeeze, a silent message that I wasn't alone that evening, no matter how many whispers had circled before. Haley arrived more than 30 minutes late. She wore an ivory white fitted dress that accentuated her stomach as if hinting at something. When she walked in, the chatter in the room dipped a beat. People turned to look at her with sympathy in their eyes, some even misty-eyed. She knew it. And she fed on it. Throughout dinner, Haley was graceful, polite, but visibly tense. Every time someone mentioned the wedding, she dabbed her eyes with a tissue, then gave a faint smile. "I'll try to make it to the ceremony, if my body can take it." Once again, all eyes were drawn to her. And I simply sat still, smiling just enough, nodding at the right moments, as if nothing was happening beneath the table where my hand rested on a black envelope. When it came time for the toasts, Nathan's father stood up to speak first. A calm man, he spoke in a warm, resonant voice. As he finished and guests began clapping, Haley gently stood up. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice trembling. "I know this night is about Madeline and Nathan, but there's something I need to say." The room fell silent. "I'm not sure I'll be able to attend the wedding tomorrow," the doctor said. "Every day I can still stand like this is a miracle." Her voice cracked. Tears streamed down her face. She pulled a blurry ultrasound photo from her purse and held it up for the guests to see. "I don't want pity. I just want to hug my sister one last time and thank her for everything. Even though I've never been a good sister." To my right, Monica covered her mouth, choked up. A college friend of mine sniffled. Nathan's foster mom dabbed at her eyes. Heads lowered, eyes reddened. I stood up. The sound of my heels echoed softly on the dark wooden floor. One step at a time, no rush, no hesitation. As I approached, Haley reached out to take my hand, but I placed mine gently on her shoulder instead, guiding her to face the entire room. I turned to the restaurant staff and gave a nod. The hostess brought over a laptop, already connected to the projector screen behind us. I spoke, no microphone needed. My voice carried through the room. "Thank you everyone for being here. Thank you, Haley, for your heartfelt words. But because of what was just said, I believe everyone here deserves to know the whole truth." I pulled a thick file from the black envelope and placed it on the table. Then I opened the laptop, casting onto the screen a test result from St. Agnes Hospital. These blood results were taken 4 days ago at my request with Haley's consent. There is no indication she has ovarian cancer. In fact, there are no markers of inflammation or tumors at all. The air in the room seemed to vanish. Haley froze. I continued. "This is a transaction receipt from Haley's card to a company called Metaform Solutions. They specialize in providing fake medical documents, including diagnosis papers and ultrasound images, for a hefty fee." I clicked. On screen appeared an email exchange between Haley and Craig D., the agency's contact. The room held its breath as lines appeared. "Need an ultrasound that looks more believable. Can you note late stage but with hope? Helps the media effect." I paused for a moment. "And this," I held up a printed document, "is legal proof that I am still Haley's lawful guardian, according to court records that were never nullified. Which means, all assets, accounts, and funds used by Haley, including the nearly $180,000 in donations from the public, are still under my legal control." Whispers broke like waves. Someone gasped, "Oh my God!" Chairs scraped back. One of Haley's friends stood up. "Haley, is this true? You lied to us." Haley opened her mouth, but no words came out. Her face turned pale as paper. Her hands trembled. The ivory dress clung to her body like a cage, holding her frozen in the gaze of 50 stunned people. I stepped back, giving the spotlight back to my sister. She stood motionless. Then whispered, barely audible, You were watching me?" I looked her in the eye. "I was protecting you." She stumbled. An aunt from my father's side reached out to catch her, but Haley swatted the hand away and bolted from the room. I didn't follow. I turned to the guests, my voice steady. "I'm sorry this evening wasn't what you expected. But if we hide the truth, we're building happiness on a lie. And I can't do that, not in front of the man I love and not in front of myself." Then I stepped down. Nathan was waiting at the end of the hallway. He didn't speak. He just took my hand. His was warm and firm. Mine was still shaking, but I had chosen to stand, not to shield, but to end something that should have stopped long ago. We left the restaurant close to midnight. No applause, no blessings. Just stunned stares, chairs scraping against wood, and hushed whispers as we passed by. The city lights blurred behind the car windows. Nathan stayed silent the whole ride, his hand on the wheel but not in a rush, like he was navigating a maze of emotions he hadn't chosen to enter. When we pulled up to our apartment, he didn't turn off the engine. He just looked at me, eyes calm like a lake before a storm. "Can you tell me how long you've known?" I nodded slightly. "About 6 weeks. But I only confirmed everything 2 weeks ago, after reviewing her treatment records, bank transactions, and verifying that the guardianship was still in effect." Nathan sighed and looked forward, silent for a moment, then asked gently, "And why didn't you tell me?" I looked down at my hands. At some point I had scratched my cuticles raw without noticing. "Because I was afraid you'd never look at me the same," I said honestly. "I didn't want to force you to choose between sympathy for my sister and loyalty to the woman you're marrying." Nathan leaned back, eyes closed. "I'm not mad that you hid it. I'm mad that you went through it alone." My throat tightened. There was no way to fully express the relief mixed with guilt that came with hearing those words. The next morning, the name Haley Carter appeared on 3 major news sites. The headline blared, "Woman fakes cancer, scams nearly $180,000 to sabotage sister's wedding." One of the posts included screenshots of Haley's old social media updates, a video clip from the podcast The Last Embrace, and excerpts from the legal records released by the police. Messages between Haley and the fake document provider leaked on Reddit and spread like wildfire. My name, of course, got dragged into it. But instead of being attacked like before, public opinion split into 2 camps. One side showed sympathy, saying I was too cold-hearted for exposing my sister in front of a crowd, calling me things like the ice-cold CO or the control freak sister. But the majority defended me. She looked strong but got stabbed in the back by her own blood and still stood up to speak the truth. Women like her deserve respect. This isn't just family stuff anymore. It's the law. Scamming that much money, manipulating the trust of hundreds of people. Her sister went easy, if anything. My family on both sides wasn't as clear-cut. My aunt, the one who held Haley in her arms the day she was born, called me that afternoon, her voice sharp with disapproval. "Couldn't you have waited a little longer, Maddie? She's still family. How could you humiliate her like that in front of relatives, friends, and strangers?" I stayed calm. "You knew she faked being sick, took money, and made up lies about my wedding, and you still say that?" My aunt hesitated. "She's still the baby of the family. You could have protected her dignity." "Auntie," I said gently, "I've been protecting her dignity for 15 years. It's time she learns to protect her own." Not everyone was like my aunt. Uncle Evan from my dad's side texted me, "You did the right thing. It hurt, but it was right. If you need legal support or someone to testify, I've got your back." Nathan's family, on the other hand, was completely silent. No comments, no passive-aggressive remarks. But the look in his mother's eyes the next morning when she met me in the kitchen, placed her hand on my shoulder and said, "Thank you for holding on to the truth," was enough to make me feel less alone. That afternoon I got a call from the Denver Police Department. An investigator named Douglas Keene confirmed that the case had been escalated to an official criminal investigation under state law. "We'll need to work with you to verify your legal guardianship status, the source of funds connected to the trust account, and the use of forged medical documents in the fundraising campaign." I agreed. That night Nathan and I sat quietly on the couch. No TV, no small talk. He interlaced his fingers with mine and softly asked, "Do you regret it?" I thought for a moment. "I regret letting it go on for so long. I regret thinking that shielding her was love. But I don't regret telling the truth." Nathan nodded. He leaned his head against my shoulder. Outside, the spring breeze drifted gently through the window blinds. But inside me, a storm had just shifted course, not to destroy, but to sweep away what was no longer true, clearing the ground for something real to begin. I officially canceled the wedding on Monday morning. No grand announcement, no dramatic statement. Just a polite email sent to the planner, the restaurant, the band, and the guests. "Thank you for your support, but the ceremony will no longer proceed as planned." Nathan and I still wanted to get married, just not under a cloud of judgment and tension. We needed something real, simple, untouched by social media, guest lists, or sideways glances. 10 days later, we stood on a small beach in Monterey Bay, a place we had once visited on a quiet vacation. On the smooth sand under the pale golden sunset, I wore a simple white dress, no veil, no heels. Nathan wore a white button-down and khaki pants, his face as peaceful as the waves gently brushing the shore. 20 friends and loved ones, the people who truly stood by us through the fallout, sat quietly on rows of small wooden benches. There were no elaborate vows, no fancy promises. Just me looking into his eyes, my hand trembling slightly, saying, I don't know what the future holds, but I know, if I had to go through all of it again, I'd still choose to walk it with you. Nathan smiled, eyes glistening. He held my hand and said, I choose you, all of you. Your strength, your scars. Every day. After the ceremony, while everyone gathered around the small dinner table, sipping wine and sharing light-hearted stories, I quietly stepped away and sat on a rock facing the ocean. The salty wind carried memories, and I knew it was time to close a chapter I'd left open for too long. The next week, I submitted a visitation request to the Jefferson County Detention Center to see Haley. It was the first time I'd seen her since the night I exposed the truth. The visitation room was divided by a thick glass panel, each side equipped with a simple phone. Haley walked in with handcuffs on, wearing a light orange jumpsuit that couldn't hide how much weight she'd lost. Her eyes were dark-ringed, her skin dull, and her once meticulously cared-for hair now tangled, tied back with a worn-out rubber band. When she saw me, she paused like she wasn't sure if it was really me. I picked up the phone without taking my eyes off her. She mirrored me and let out a faint breath. You still came, Haley rasped. I promised I wouldn't abandon you, I said. I meant it. Even if you didn't. Haley looked down, silent for a long time. I didn't fill the silence. Sometimes silence is its own kind of conversation. Did you ever wonder why I hated you so much? Haley asked, still not meeting my eyes. I was surprised, but I didn't answer. I wanted her to keep going. When I was little, I overheard Mom and Dad fighting in the kitchen. I was hiding under the table. She screamed, that girl's not even your blood. She's just an obligation, not real family. I went cold. Haley went on, still staring at the tabletop. Ever since then, I believed you weren't really my sister. That I was the only real child and you were just brought in out of duty. I hated how everyone called you the model child, the selfless one, the perfect one. I felt like the outsider, but then I started thinking maybe you were the one who didn't belong. So you wanted to ruin everything I had? I asked, barely a whisper. Haley didn't deny it. She just said softly, I thought, if you lost everything, I wouldn't feel so small anymore. I placed the phone down on the table, my hand trembling slightly. Part of me hurt. Another part was simply tired. When I got home, I opened the old wooden chest Mom had kept in the basement. Among the faded documents, I found a sealed yellow envelope. Inside was my original birth certificate and an adoption confirmation from the state of Illinois, dated when I was 2. I sat on the floor, eyes fixed on the line that read, birth name, Madeline Grace Harper. Adoptive guardians, Eleanor Richard Carter. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just felt an eerie kind of stillness, like something inside me had finally been released after years of being bound too tight. I had spent my whole life trying to do everything right to hold together a family I never truly belonged to. And the one person I had fought to protect at all costs had been carrying a secret resentment I was never even allowed to see. I looked down at the paper in my hand and whispered, like talking to myself, so, that's what it was. I didn't write to her right away. I needed time to understand the feelings creeping through me. It wasn't anger. It wasn't even disappointment. It was something deeper, something like sorrow. For my sister. And for the little girl I once was. I remembered all the times Haley cried in the dark when no one noticed, the outbursts that made no sense, the emotional performances I once dismissed as manipulation, but now I saw something different in them. A very real fear. The fear of being abandoned. The fear of not being truly loved. Maybe because she never believed she was truly loved, she never learned how to love others in a healthy way. I sat at the wooden table, a blank sheet of paper in front of me, pen in hand, hesitating for quite a while. Then I wrote. No edits, no do-overs, just letting the words flow like water over stone. Dear Haley, I'm not angry anymore. Maybe I once thought you were ungrateful, selfish, even cruel. But now I understand. You were just a girl trying to find yourself in a world where everyone demanded you be perfect, be exceptional, be the most loved. And in that journey you chose the wrong way. I can't erase what happened. But I can promise this. When you get out of here, if you're willing, I'll walk beside you. To heal. Not out of pity but out of faith, that anyone can learn how to love again. I've always been your guardian, legally and emotionally. But next time, if you'll let me, I just want to be your sister. No controlling. No overprotecting. Just someone you can lean on when you're ready. I folded the letter, sealed it, and neatly wrote the address of the detention center on the envelope. I felt lighter. About 3 months later, I officially launched a nonprofit called Grace Haven. It was a small center run out of a restored old house in the suburbs of Seattle. Grace Haven didn't just offer legal support to those manipulated financially or emotionally by family. It also held group therapy sessions, one-on-one counseling, and recovery programs for emotional trauma. The first person who walked into the office on opening day was an elderly woman in her 60s. She hugged me tightly and broke down in tears, saying her son had forged her signature to take out tens of thousands of dollars in loans. After her came a sophomore college student whose parents controlled his bank account and threatened to cut off tuition if he didn't pursue the major they chose. Then a single mother whose sister had stolen all her online fundraising donations. Every story was another piece of the puzzle, reminding me, Haley wasn't the only one. There were so many people wounded by the very people they loved the most. And I wanted to do something for them, something no one had done for me. 8 months later, on a fall afternoon when golden leaves blanketed the street outside, Nathan and I held a small wedding ceremony in a friend's backyard. No bridesmaids. No photographers. No social media hashtags. Just the soft sound of an acoustic guitar, a sheer veil fluttering in the breeze, and Nathan's eyes on me, warm like sunlight on my shoulders. He didn't need me to be strong. He didn't need me to be perfect. He loved even the hidden corners of me, and I had learned how to do the same for myself. A week after the wedding, I received a handwritten letter with no signature, but I knew who it was from. The paper had faded markings I recognized immediately. You may not be my biological sister, but you're the only sister I ever had. I'm sorry for everything. One day I get the chance to start over. I want to learn how to become someone you can be proud of. I didn't cry, but I smiled. Maybe every wound leaves a scar. But if you look closely, you'll see that even cracks can let light in. I'm sharing this story not to ask for sympathy, and not to pass judgment on anyone. Every family has its own shadows. What matters is what you do with those shadows, whether you live through them or let them swallow you whole. I chose to walk out of mine. And if someone listening right now has ever been hurt, manipulated, or treated like a tool inside their own home, remember, some betrayals don't break you. They teach you how to stand without needing anyone to hold you up. My story may not be exactly like yours. But if somewhere in your past, you've ever felt wounded by someone you trusted, if your efforts were dismissed, if you carried your whole family on your back without anyone noticing, then I hope you'll share your thoughts in the comments. You'll be surprised how many people out there carry the same invisible bruises. And your story might be the light that helps someone else find the courage to go on. Family is where we're born, but it isn't always where we're loved right. Sometimes the journey to find yourself is also the journey to redefine what family really means. If this story touched something in your heart, don't forget to follow the channel. There are more stories to come, real slices of life about family, hard choices, and moments of healing that once seemed impossible. Because sometimes the one thing we need most is simply to be heard.